Alright, YouTube, because of the heat wave, all I wanted to do was keep cool and play RuneScape, but then there was breaking news that Hillary has made her VP announcement. It's Tim Kaine. Not a huge surprise. It wasn't going to be Elizabeth Warren. She's not going to go for a two-woman ticket. It wasn't going to be Bernie Sanders. She has just made, I think, the biggest mistake of the entire general election by not going further to the left. Tim Kaine is sort of a centrist Democrat, sort of like somebody who's on par with Hillary, just a corporate Democrat. I don't know what she was thinking. Her best chance was to go with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, even having a two-female ticket, which would, I guess, piss off some business Democrats who'd see it as like a sign of, oh, the Democratic Party's just pandering to the female vote or whatever. It still would, at least it would have brought some of the burnouts back on board. Tim Kaine, you can fucking forget about it. Tim Kaine has announced his personal opposition to abortion. My God, is this a socially progressive campaign or what? Now, of course, he qualifies that by saying, well, the government should make that decision, women should. But he still says, oh, I'm a Catholic, my religious views interfere with me supporting it. This is nuts. And by the way, before a few days ago, when Tim Kaine was mentioned in the company of Warren and the other person who's even less memorable that even escapes my mind at the moment as far as their name goes, until a few days ago, did you know Tim Kaine existed? Chances are, unless you're like a poli-sci major or you're really into politics, chances are you'd never heard the name. And if it was brought up, and even if you knew the name, you knew him, oh, he's that dude from Virginia. And he's boring. And he's old and white. I'm failing to see how this helps. This is sort of like Trump choosing Mike Pence. Mike Pence became a non-issue. That is, it brought some of the establishment sort of Republican figures on board, and some people kind of liked his a little bit further right banter. At the same time, people like myself said, well, I don't really want him in as VP because if something happens to Trump, I really don't want to see President Pence. But Tim Kaine, my goodness, I couldn't think of a person more boring that Hillary Clinton could have picked. The New York Times, link in the description, is the link. It's just the first one that comes up. That's why I put it in there. They say, oh, she chose popular swing state, blah, blah, blah. He's not that popular. Several times he barely squeaked by getting elected in the first place with not even 51% of the vote. And preface this and frame it in terms of the news that I gave you earlier regarding the Supreme Court of Virginia's decision as far as felon voting rights goes. That really evens the odds in Virginia. To go after somebody just because they happen to be from a swing state isn't necessarily a winning strategy and hasn't been for some time. The fact that, for instance, Pence is from Indiana doesn't necessarily mean Indiana is no longer in play and Trump has automatically grabbed it up. Yeah, there will be some crossover votes there, but it's not insurmountable. Hillary Clinton is taking a huge risk by fixating on Virginia and sort of that general region. You'd think Virginia and the Carolinas, really, as opposed to going for someone from the Rust Belt to really shore up her support against a candidate who is challenging her in Michigan and Pennsylvania, of all places, as well as probably is going to get Indiana and Ohio. Has a chance in Wisconsin and Minnesota as well. Hillary Clinton just chose somebody about which the average voter does not know anything. But when they get to know who Tim Kaine is a little bit more, if they do any fact-checking at all, they're going to find, yes, indeed, he is simply a centrist core corporate Democrat. He's not a progressive. He's not far to the left. It's a sign that Hillary Clinton is going to move closer to the center during the general. That's going to further alienate the far-left voters. The problem for Hillary was that it was an either-or argument at some point there. At some point, it got to the stage at which she could either go further to the left and reabsorb sort of the Sanders and Warren people and choose a VP along those lines and hope that that buoys up her support, especially with the youth vote climbing back on board away from some of these third parties. Or she could move closer to the center, hope that the business Democrats from the Rust Belt come back, and at the same time universally piss off especially younger voters, leading to a greater mass exodus from the Democratic Party. She chose the latter. Honestly, I think the former was a better bet. It would have been better to shore up your support with a larger demographic nationwide and lose a few of the Rust Belt states in hopes of retaining maybe Iowa and New Hampshire and Virginia and all these places, and to focus single-mindedly on Virginia. Hope that maybe you can kind of make an inroad in North Carolina, sacrifice the entire fucking Rust Belt, and piss off at least a good quarter of the Democratic electorate. This is probably the worst. This is a worse pick than Mike Pence. This is arguably the worst person she could have picked out of the five. It was like Trump. He narrows it down to three. He says, well, the three are as follows: Chris Christie, Mike Pence, Newt Gingrich. Of those three, Newt would have been the best choice. Pence was in the middle. Christie would have been way worse than Pence. Nobody would have taken him seriously at that point. I think it would have been better to choose Gingrich. So he chose second place sort of person. She chose third place sort of person. Elizabeth Warren and that other sort of fat-headed looking dude. I can't remember his name. That would have been like second choice. Because again, nobody knows anything about him, but I do know he's further left than like Kaine. And Elizabeth Warren is a progressive. She's sort of like Bernie Light. That would have been great for getting especially the younger voters back on board with the Democratic Party. This is just going to help the Democratic Party continue moving towards being the boring party of people with bad, outdated, decades-old ideas, as opposed to the Republicans that right now have apparently begun embracing gay marriage. They've actually stepped into the modern century. The Democratic Party is going, I guess, backwards, back towards the anarchist days of the interwar period or something like that. Sounds an awful lot like some of the weird social movements that didn't give a fuck about anything and just wanted to drink wine all the time, the daddyists and so forth, back then in like the 1910s and 1920s or something like that. That's really what the Democratic Party is beginning to resemble. Of course, at the time, the Democratic Party was the party of the Ku Klux Klan. I think we're seeing the Democrats are moving backwards at a steady clip here. They're trying to deal with Trump's populism. They're trying to deal with the rise of nativism. What they're doing is not working. They realize they couldn't go full socialist, they'd lose. But at the same time, if they alienate that socialist element that has begun to gain prevalence within their party, they can't win either. That's another reason I've said, from a fairly early point in this election, right after South Carolina, I began predicting Trump now had a good chance of being the nominee. Nobody at the time took it seriously. And around the time that it became clear, after Super Tuesday, between Super Tuesday and, the subsequent 5-race night, I think it was Maryland, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and a few of these other states, between those periods, it became clear Trump was energizing and capitalizing upon popular consciousness in a way that his opponents were not, and in a way that the Democrats weren't. Bernie, to a lesser degree, had done so. He would have stood a fighting chance. He's not going to be visible in terms of Hillary Clinton, I think, campaigning. Outside of, she'll trot her out in New Hampshire. She'll send him to New Hampshire and have him hold a rally every day, and that's probably all she's going to do. Maybe she'll send him to Colorado as well, because I'm a weed dude. Other than that, she doesn't have any spot for these Warren probably, she ruled her out very quickly, because what do we know about people like Hillary? They don't want to compete with people of the same gender, because they are rapacious, even if it doesn't psychologically manifest itself in an outright, literally sexual manner. They are rapacious individuals. They like to slash and burn everything before them. They like to subjugate others. They're bullies, essentially. That's what Hillary Clinton is. We've seen with the DNC leaks, and I will cover that. I'm not going to do it tonight. It's too many videos for one day. I'll cover it tomorrow. With the DNC's leak, we see, oh yeah, the DNC was directly involved with sort of negotiating with Hillary Clinton to try to smear Bernie Sanders. Oh man, this is going to hurt her even worse than her choosing Tim Kaine. Again, a person about which the average Democratic partisan doesn't know jack shit. So how the hell is he going to help energize anything outside of Virginia? Absolutely incapable of choosing a person probably who would be less qualified for the post. Do you think that all those far-left Democrats are going to like the idea of someone who has stated a personal opposition, a religious opposition to abortion as their VP with the possibility of the president dying or going mad or being severely injured or resigning or being impeached or something, and you get the VP taking over? Is this going to reassure that segment of the Democratic population? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to work at all. In fact, unlike Pence, who I didn't like but a lot of Republicans didn't care, I think this might actually decline her support slightly. I certainly don't think it's going to give her a boost. It'll allow her to eat up some of the media for a day or two, but ultimately these people will be like, well, it's kind of a boring individual, just an old white dude from Virginia. Who gives a fuck? And he's not a zany far leftist. He doesn't constantly sling one-liners at people. He's barely newsworthy, and Clinton will probably keep him in the background anyway, barely let him go campaign. It's her MO to want to take center stage at all times. But even then, she likes to remain absent from the public eye. She never grants in. She doesn't just open up to a room full of reporters. She'll have a one-on-one interview every once in a while, and that's all she does. Honestly, she's almost like a hermit at this point. That's about all. Peace out.